Well, barely a day after troubled developer China Evergrande said it aims to have an initial restructuring plan in 6 months, Beijing is reportedly considering breaking it up. Analysts say any sort of deal will likely be on a piecemeal basis due to the size and scope of the assets involved. The expectation is a solution will likely be directed by the central and local governments. Well, no concrete plans are on the table, but reports say proceeds from asset sales would be used to repay creditors. It is unclear how much losses banks and bondholders would be forced to accept. One report says a group led by China Asset Management, that's a state-owned bad debt manager and major Evergrande creditor, would absorb any unsold property assets. Evergrande's property management and electric vehicle units could be sold at a later date. Now, if approved, this plan would mark the biggest move by Beijing to avoid a disorderly breakdown of the world's most indebted developer. It would also likely set off a lengthy battle over who gets paid from what remains. Evergrande's cash crunch has become a focus for global investors, worried that a collapse might spark financial contagion. But Evergrande's aim for an initial restructuring plan may have already been scuttled. So Oaktree Capital, an Evergrande creditor, is said to have seized a big plot of land in Hong Kong where Evergrande had been planning to build a Versailles-like mansion. The 2.2 million square foot project is a crucial piece of collateral in Evergrande's planned restructuring of $20 billion of offshore debt. And for more, Sandra Chow, co-head of Asia Pacific Financials Research at Credit Sites, joins us. Well, Sandra, China weighing a breakup of Evergrande. If this goes ahead, would it, just be another version of a state bailout?
Yes, in a way. I think that any kind of rescue would ultimately be directed by the government or have, implicit approval by the government. Our expectation here at Credit Sites has always been that given the size and the scale of Evergrande, any kind of restructuring that would happen would have to kind of be on, as you said earlier, a kind of piecemeal basis because it's just such a large company. It would be impossible for one single company, whether it's a real estate developer or a financial investor, to assume the whole company's assets and liabilities and restructure it. So our expectation, I think the markets has always been that there would be some kind of breakup and it would involve many, many stakeholders at the various local government and possibly corporate levels as well.
And what would be the implications for other indebted Chinese developers? Then do you think, this sort of lifeline could be offered to them as well?
I think the government has been very clear as part of its deleveraging campaign, and this is one of the reasons why Evergrande is in so much trouble right now, is that there is no guaranteed full bailout by the state anymore. China has for many, many years been slowly moving towards this market-based system of credit risk, and Evergrande is, a very big example of how that could play out. So right now, I think market participants are still really nervous. A lot of the China property developers are, if there's still ongoing concerns, they're trading at distressed levels in the bond markets. Some of them have already gone into default or restructuring. So we've had a number of smaller developers before Evergrande, and even since Evergrande has got into trouble, a number of smaller developers have defaulted on their debts, or they've been forced to come to the negotiating table with bondholders and introduce things like exchange offers where they've tried to negotiate an extension of their debts coming due or a reduction of the interest payments. So I think the outcome for other developers will depend a lot on what the recovery rates for creditors will be at the end of the Evergrande crisis. The dollar bonds of Evergrande are still trading in the teens, which kind of shows a very low confidence in the types of recovery rates that we're going to get for them. Of course, if it turns out that that's higher, then I think that will boost the sector confidence a lot. But right now, I think it's still too uncertain and there's no concrete restructuring plan on the table as yet.
So, Sandra, let's say this restructuring plan is approved for Evergrande and goes ahead. What would be the impact on China's property market? As you say, the market is nervous right now.
Yeah. So approval can mean various things. I mean, it could mean that retail investors get their money back. It could mean that home buyers get their money back. It could mean that employees of the company or its construction partners or suppliers get paid. But a rescue may not necessarily mean that all of the creditors get paid, and especially the offshore creditors. And I think that's a big concern given the amount of offshore debt that Evergrande and other China property developers have. So they're kind of structurally subordinated to all of the stakeholders who are, based in China. And there's a lot of concern at the end of the day, even once the company is restructured, even if the government intervenes and asks, stronger companies, stronger state-owned property developers or the banks or other stakeholders to get involved, there's still a concern that there may not be enough money at the end of the day to pay everyone. And at the bottom of the pile is likely to be the offshore creditors.
Oh, thanks for that, Sandra
so that
Chow.
Kind of has a, yeah.
Thanks for that, Sandra Chow at Credit Sites.